Hi there, Marvin Lindsay, pastor of First Presbyterian Church, backing out of the church parking lot because I got to go by the post office and I forgot to go by the post office on the way in. And since I have to make this little errand, let's talk about baptism. Yesterday, we had a wonderful worship service where a couple in our church brought a baby for baptism. And it was very special because it was on Mother's Day, and don't worry, we did do this in a safe, social distancing way. Actually, I believe Dad administered the water while I said the words. And it was great, and I hope that you had a chance to worship with us online yesterday and you got to see it. But if you are new to the Presbyterian Church, or First Presbyterian in particular, you may be wondering, well, why are they baptizing a baby? I mean, the baby's not old enough to say that they believe in Jesus Christ. The baby hasn't committed any sins that they need to be forgiven for. And yes, that's what baptism means. It's a sign of God's forgiveness of sins in Jesus Christ. It's a sign of faith in Jesus Christ. And it means some other things too. I used to get these questions a lot when I was growing up in the Bible Belt. I would get two questions. The first question was, how do you spell Presbyterian? And then the second question was, why do y'all baptize babies? Like, that's the dumbest thing in the world, baptizing a baby. What do they need that for? So, in answer to these questions, well, the answer to the first is, you spell Presbyterian Presbyterian. Okay. But in answer to the second question, I gave a little bit of an answer in my sermon yesterday. One of the things I said is that parenting is just an exercise in letting go. That's all it is, basically. They're given to us, they're given into our arms, and then we have to give them away over and over. Put them on the school bus, give them the keys to the car, walk them down the aisle. That's what parenting is. It's an exercise in letting go. And it's easier to let go of our children if we've first given them into God's loving arms. It's easier to let them out of our sight if we know that God's got God's eyes on them. And so that's why we baptize babies. But there are other reasons as well. And let's talk about faith, for instance. There is faith present at a baptism of an infant or a small child. It's the faith of the parents or the guardians or the grandparents who bring the child for baptism. And in the Bible, there are some indications that God uses the faith of one person in a household to save other people in the household. I believe that when Peter preaches his first sermon on the day of Pentecost, I think he wraps up that sermon. You can check me on this. Okay, look it up. It's Acts 2. It's on page 57 in my Bible. Oh, just kidding. He wraps up his first sermon, tells them about Jesus being crucified and raised from the dead, and he says the promises for you and for your children and for those who are near and far, for all who call on the name of the Lord. I believe that's in Acts 2. Might be one of his other sermons. But at any rate, the promises for you and for your children. So there's a place for baptism for children of believing parents. Another example, which is really kind of fascinating, is Paul, in his letter to the church at Corinth, is giving advice to people in the Corinthian church who may be married to pagans, people who worship idols and don't believe in Jesus Christ. And the question is, should I divorce my spouse if they're not a believing Christian? And Paul says no, because the believer's faith can save the unbelieving spouse. So there's these indications in Scripture that that God is working through the faith of one person in the household to save all the people in the household. And the other reason I think that is really important for why Presbyterians baptize infants and small children is that basically when it comes to salvation, we're all infants. It doesn't matter whether we become believers in Jesus Christ when we're age 47 or whether we were raised in a Christian household from day one. We are all infants when it comes to salvation. We are all helpless. And we are all depending on God to take the initiative, God to reach out and provide this precious gift of salvation for us, just like infants and small children are depending on their parents or their legal guardians or their grandparents to provide them with the food and clothing and shelter that they can't provide for themselves. So God puts people in our lives who are witnesses to Jesus Christ. And God's Spirit is also working within us, preparing our hearts and our minds to receive the words of encouragement that we get from other faithful Christians, so that we don't react to those words with disbelief or with cynicism, but we respond to them in faith. So those are the main reasons. One is that there's some indications in Scripture that are at least satisfying to me that God is working through the faith of one person in the household to bring salvation to that entire household. And so we should baptize the children of believing parents. And also, we're all infants when it comes to this salvation business. We're all dependent on God showing mercy to us. We're all dependent on God taking the initiative, taking that first step, and we respond. Parents, they put the food on the spoon and put it in the baby's mouth, and the baby eats and is filled. And in the same way, God feeds us with grace and with faith, and then we respond by growing in grace and faith. So that's a little bit about why we Presbyterians baptize infants and small children. If you have any questions or want to continue this conversation, just use the comment feature where this is posted, or send me an email. My email address is marvinl@fbccolumbia.org. So thanks, and have a great Monday. Take care. Goodbye.